What is the history of French political culture? By Landon Chatfield. What is political culture? Political culture is a set of shared views and normative judgments held by a population regarding its political system. In this PowerPoint, we are talking about French's political system and the history of political culture. To start with the history of the political culture, we have to start with the current government before the French Revolution. The current government at the time was a French monarchy system. French's government was a monarchy system. The regime was that everyone was a subject of the King of France, and all the rights for social order was divided into three orders: clergy, nobility, and others, which was the third estates. And they were divided into the general estates. The first estate was the clergy, which was 1% of the people and owned 10% of the land. The second estate was nobles, which was 2% of the people, owned 25% of the land. The third estate was the middle class, peasants, and city workers, and 97% of the people, and owned 65% of the land. After that, during the French Revolution, the political culture of France changed a lot. Starting out with the revolution, the National Assembly, the financial crisis of the government, and the state influence, and formed the National Assembly on June 17, 1789, claiming to represent the entire nation because they felt misinterpreted and they were not let into the meetings between the first estate and the second estate. The storming of Bastille in 1789, in response to growing unrest and rumors of an impending royal crackdown, Parisians stormed the Bastille, a symbol of royal tyranny, on July 14, 1789. This event is considered the beginning of the revolution and celebrated annually as Bastille Day, which left a mark on France's history. A key event in the French Revolution was the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. The National Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, which proclaimed the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and laid the foundation for a new French political and social order, eliminating the feudal system. So there was no longer a clergy, nobilities, and no social order. The execution of King Louis. He was tried and found guilty of treason for attempting to escape and conspiring with foreign enemies. He was executed by guillotine, marking the end of the French monarchy. There was no longer a French monarchy system when he was executed. After he was executed, the government system of France was a republic system. After that, the leadership of Robespierre, the revolutionary government, engaged in extreme measures to protect the government during the revolution. Thousands of perceived enemies were executed by guillotine, including Queen Maria and many political opponents trying to protect the republic system. Napoleon Bonaparte, 1799. On November 9th, 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte staged a coup d'etat and overthrew the Directory, establishing the consulate, effectively ending the revolution and starting the Napoleonic era, which he was an emperor, bringing back the monarchy system. The French Revolution. The French Revolution marked a significant shift in French society. The ideologies and political system. The overthrow of the monarchy changed the French political ways, and the monarchy was changed to a republic. The instability of the revolution paved the way for Napoleon Bonaparte to become the ruler of France, eventually declaring himself emperor. Key Enlightenment thinkers during this time were Jean Jacques Rousseau's ideas that general will, where the community's interests should prevail over individual desires, proudly influenced the formation of the French Republic and its democratic ideals. Montesquieu's ideas on political institutions and preserving freedom and liberty influenced the representative system of governance, influencing the ideals on individual rights and the role of the states. These Enlightenment thinkers were ahead of its time in the ideals of the government and freedom and liberty. The colonization and decolonization of France. The colonial past of France, they tried to colonize Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, promoting the idea that France was bringing civilization to so called primitive societies involving cultural assimilation, violent reposition, forced labor, and economic exploitation of local populations. Some of the colonization they did was Algeria. France expanded its holding across much of North Africa and sub Saharan Africa. In 1830, it began its colonization of Algeria, which became an integral part of France, with France settlers establishing dominance over the indigenous population. Indochina. France expanded its influence in Southeast Asia by establishing the French Indochina colony, which included modern day Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. This region became vital for the extraction of resources like rubber and rice and became an important site for French military operations. Assimilation. French colonial policy was initially based on the idea of assimilation, which sought to integrate colonized people into French culture and political life, then adapted to French settlers and indigenous populations, focusing more on economic exploitation. Post-colonial past. National movements in colonized regions led to decolonization of France and independence of the countries. France's colonial crimes and their long-lasting impacts of culture assimilation, violent reposition, forced labor, and economic exploitation of local populations had left a mark on France's political culture. The Algerian War of Independence, 1854 1962, one of the most significant and violent conflicts in France's colonization history. The war ended with Algeria gaining independence, but it left deep scars on both Algeria and the French with the violence in the war. Indochina War. The struggle for independence in French Indochina culminated in the defeat of the French at Dien Bien Phu in 1954, leading to the end of the French colonial rule in Vietnam and the establishment of an independent North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Women's political advancement. In the 19th century, women in France, like many parts of the world, faced significant legal and social barriers. The French Revolution promised equality but excluded women from the political process. In the late 19th and early 20th century, the women's rights groups began advocating for political and civil rights, but women were not granted the right to vote. French feminist movements played a key role in pushing for suffrage during this period. Women in France gained the right to vote in 1944. This was a significant milestone in the country's history following years of struggle for women's right. The decision was made by the French provisional government after World War II, changing France's political culture. Laicity. Laicity's core principle in French society refers to the separation of religion from the government and public institutions. It ensures that the state remains neutral in religious matters and that individuals have a freedom of religion while ensuring that religion does not influence public policy or institutions. The 1905 Law on the Separation of Church and State. The 1905 Law on Separation of Church and State formally established the separation between religious institutes and the state. This law aimed to create a public sphere, ensuring that the state would not favor any religion and that religious groups would not interfere with governmental affairs. The Fifth Republic. The Fifth Republic marked a shift in France's political structure with a strong executive branch, particularly the office of the president, and a clear division of powers between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Fifth Republic is the current republic system of government in France, established in 1958. It was founded by Charles de Gaulle in response to political instability and challenges. France's semi presidential system. France's semi presidential system is a unique form of government that combines elements of both presidential and parliamentary systems. The President of France is directly elected by the people for a 5 year term and holds significant executive powers, including commanding the military, setting foreign policy, and appointing the Prime Minister. Appointed by the President, the Prime Minister heads the government and is responsible for domestic policies and day to day governance. The Prime Minister is accountable to the National Assembly. The semi presidential system creates a balance of power between the President and the Prime Minister. Charles de Gaulle. His vision for a strong executive system led to the creation of the current Constitution. Presided over the earlier years of the Fifth Republic and was instrumental in shaping its institutions, including the presidency's central role. He also played a role for foreign policy of independence. France's history of protest. France's vibrant history of protest, May 1968. The events of May 1968 were a combination of student protests, labor strikes, and widespread public demonstrations. The movement was fueled by dissatisfaction with a variety of issues, including conservative social values, economic equality, political repression, and the Vietnam War. Another vibrant history of the protest was the Yellow Vest movement, a significant protest movement in response to fuel tax increases, economic equality, government policies, and the political culture. The yellow vest became a powerful symbol of the protest, representing everyday citizens' anger and frustration. A landmark moment in French history representing a broad populist backlash against economic policies. The movement impacted France's political culture of issues of economic justice and democracy. The government suspended the fuel tax increases and offered wage hikes for low income workers, showing the effects of populist movements. A populist movements. A political approach that strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel that their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. These movements reflect widespread dissatisfaction with the political elite in the current state of French democracy, and they continue to influence the national political debate. Some of these movements were the protests such as the 1968 protest and the Yellow Vest protest reflect these populist movements. Summary: French's political culture is shaped by its revolutionary heritage, emphasizing liberty, equality, and fraternity. It features secularism, laicity, a semi-presidential system, and a strong tradition of protest and civic engagement. The legacy of colonialism influences debates on race and immigration, while France's role in the European Union balances national sovereignty with integration. Social movements, including populism and women's political investment, further define its dynamic political landscape, which all had effect on French's history and political culture. And these are my sources.